Good morning. Good morning. Good morning. Good morning. I am Tamara Johnson-shealey. Good morning. It is the day after Christmas. Happy holidays, everybody. Happy holidays. It is that magical time of the year, but I promise you, 2020 has not been all that magical for most of us. So let me see where my trusty co-hosts are this morning. Let's see. There's David. Happy
Hey,
holidays,
yeah,
David.
same to you. Same to you. Hanukkah, Christmas, Kwanzaa, and
Yes.
whatever else. Hey, hi
Hey,
everybody.
good morning. Let's see if this beautiful Robbie. Good morning, Robbie.
Feliz
Happy
Navidad.
holidays. Feliz Navidad. Am I saying that right?
Navidad. But very close.
Navidad. Close. That was the black version.
Happy holidays, everybody.
Happy holidays. What did y'all do? What did y'all do? You know what? All I wanted was some macaroni. And I know that's silly, but I'm kind of lactose intolerant, so it's only certain cheeses I can eat. So, and it takes me a little while to make my macaroni. So I actually made me some macaroni. So I had a good Christmas. The kids didn't
Lovely.
even care. What'd you do, David?
I went out walking in the freezing weather.
Oh Lord.
It was really, really cold out, and everything was closed. It was really just amazingly quiet and deserted all
No
around.
cars on the street, David. Nobody honking and waving at you.
Well, no, I mean there really were very few cars. Whole area seemed like nobody was home either. There was just nobody outside at all. It was so cold. It was really, really bitterly cold. I thought they had transported the whole city up to Minnesota or something like that. But of course, 20 degrees below there. I couldn't even step outside if it was that. I
Mhm.
used to do it though. I used to run out in that weather.
Robbie, what did you do, lovely lady?
Uh, I get asked a lot, like, what does someone like me do? And I actually lead a very boring existence. I really do. Nobody believes me. Like, I get questions all the time. Were you here? Were you here? No, in fact, I want to take this opportunity if we don't have the guest yet. I
He's
sent you
here. Go ahead.
here. Okay, well, we can do it whenever. I sent you a couple photos. To David's point, it was so cold. I did a little bit of outreach and I did a little advocacy in between downtime. And there's a picture of someone, and of course, I sent it to you. I sent you the video. You can feel free if you want to put it on the screen. When David said it's so cold out, it was freezing. And our warming shelters, we don't know if they're testing for COVID. And so when people go to a warming shelter and they're homeless and they don't have medical, they actually could be subjecting themselves to something worse, and therefore, through no faults of their own, maybe becoming carriers, right, and potentially harming all of us. And so when you see these, articles about the homeless camping at the airport, and we have such a busy airport, and it's in messengers, the last couple ones I sent you. But one thing people often don't equate is sometimes our unsheltered population and families who are at risk, not only do they have children, but they have companion animals. And I found this man on the street with his companion animal. And for people who are contradicting to fund the police, please know that I had to call the police because when you see the picture of him, you'll see why. One, he looked very distressed. Two, it was freezing. Three, the dog looked very distressed. But if we did reallocate funds, the second part of defund the police, right? Just like you're talking about, withhold the vote, the second part of withhold the vote and strategically leverage for more instead of fighting for scraps. If we had a division that were, peacekeepers, I wouldn't have to worry that something worse was going to happen to this man. If we had affordable housing or warming shelters that allowed this is a great segue into that, or warming shelters that allowed pets or tiny homes, this would be an alternative. And so many people are in this circumstances. And the other shot you showed was Teslin, who I'm a fan of. Figaro, shout out Teslin. If she's watching it all, if anybody knows her. She is the truth. She hits it on both sides. You know, the problems with Democrats, the problems with Republicans, and she's 1,000% right. Just like you, Tamara, we are fighting for scraps. I see such wealthy Democrats, you know, requesting funds from the public. You know, John Ossoff is $5 to $8 million net worth. The other day, the former Secretary of Education is a Spanish guy. I don't know. Julio Castro was out at. If you look at his net worth, Pastor Warnock makes $275,000 to pastor, not to mention speaking engagements. And they're asking us to fund. And again, Republicans, Carrie Loeffler, she's the most wealthy in the Senate. Why is anyone asking us to fund anything when they're getting salaries of $174,000 a year on both House and Senate? And to me, this is a racket. There was an argument about funding last time on the show, and then I'm gonna shut up, I promise. But we can get funding, whoever's in charge, all day long. And if it's not allocated to the very people it should be aiding, but instead becomes funds into nonprofits and, you know, their own media cover for accolades, what is this? We have so many problematic nonprofits and SWATs. And, you know, look at the state of our community. So I hope that man got help. I don't know if I made it worse. I don't know if his dog got impounded. I don't know if he froze to death. I don't know if anyone came out. I don't know what happened to him. And I got a message from a nonprofit, and his dog. You know, he was literally crying on the street on Christmas, and he was not the only person. There were a multitude of people out there. And for those people who tell me I shouldn't be documenting or whatever, what do you want me to do? Leave him there and not do anything so you all don't know? I'm sorry if I ruined your Christmas.
Amen, Robbie.
We're going to bring in our guest this morning. We have, you know, we've been talking about these, you know, this is week 4, I believe, Robbie, and we've had guests from this special election to the United States Senate. And this morning we have Mr. Brian Slowinski. Let's bring him into our guest. Good morning, Brian.
Morning, everyone.
Good morning. Welcome, welcome. It was great to run alongside you. There was a lot of candidates in this race. Thank you for putting your hat in. You know, there was a candidate for everyone in this race.
Yeah, the whole problem is because of the jungle election is it really split the vote quite extensively, and I think what needs to happen is there needs to be an alternative to the two-party wing of the same bird of prey that's running against us all the time. We need someone in Washington, D.C. who's actually going to work for the people again.
Absolutely. Tell us about yourself, Brian. I know that you have a large family. And I was wondering, like, the whole time, like, how do you do it? You said 8 kids and 4 dogs. How were you able to kind of maneuver campaigning in the campaign trail?
Well, 8 kids, 4 dogs. Because of COVID, I had to pretty much stay inside because I'm at risk because of my age and because I'm overweight, and I also have a bad case of asthma. So I couldn't do much out like I had planned to do out and about because I'm more of a people person. I like to go out and about, shake hands, and talk to people. So that made that difficult. So one of the things that I did is the best way to get the name out was I sponsored a series of debates. We had 14 debates online via like Zoom, like what you're doing here. We had 14 debates starting in July, every week, every Monday night. All the candidates were invited. Some showed, some didn't. The $1 million candidates didn't even bother to show up. But we always had a Republican. We always had a Democrat. We always had an independent. We had a green guy. And then I was endorsed by the Libertarian Party. And then I was cross-endorsed or recommended by the Constitution Party. So actually in the race, I was actually the only other candidate other than the Green Party guy that was actually endorsed by a political party, because everybody else, there was no endorsement because there was no primary.
Yeah, and I want to say thank you for the invite. I never did make it to any of your debates because I really did get on the ground. Like, I risked it all, and I was masked and had on gloves, but I was really on the ground.
Well, my family, I have 2 little boys who are from China, so they're susceptible to COVID as well. And I also have a daughter from China who has asthma too. So I can't bring that into the household. So I had to be very careful from a family standpoint.
Can I ask you a question for those people who may not know? And I don't, when you say $1 million candidates, give an example. And what do you mean $1 million candidates? Also, for those people who don't know you, what were the 3 main things you would say you ran on that you were interested in executing as an elected official?
Well, first off, $1 million candidate would be someone who has been funding of $1 million or more, or spent more than $1 million on the campaign. That would basically break down to obviously Kelly Loeffler. She pretty much self-funded hers, but she's also asking other people to fund it as well. You had Congressman Doug Collins as well. Those are the two top Republicans when it came to money. There were actually 6 Republicans on the ballot, but only 2 ever got any coverage at all. On the Democratic side, you had Raphael Warnock, who had a lot of money being brought in from out of state, particularly Washington, D.C., to support his campaign. I believe Matt Lieberman also had over $1 million. And I think it was just those 2 that had over $1 million that they had raised and spent. So basically, any coverage by the media was basically those 4 candidates and nobody else. They purposely would leave anybody else off of when it comes to polls. Great examples of all the polls that were put out there. I was probably included on 25% of the polls. Okay.
Does that sound like democracy to you?
No. And actually, we're a constitutional republic, so we need to make sure that we get back to that constitutional republic and have those checks and balances available for our the people in the states to keep the federal government in check. We don't have that right now.
For those of you, I'm sure you've been in politics. I'm not sure how long you'll probably hopefully state so, and what you wanted to get accomplished, but explain a constitutional republic and then what you wanted to get accomplished as a candidate.
Well, basically, as a constitutional republic, you have checks and balances that are written into the Constitution that allow the executive branch to be a check on the judicial as well as the legislative branch, and vice versa. The legislative branch has its checks when it comes to the judicial as well as the executive branch. Like, for example, the House of Representatives has to author all spending bills. No money can be spent unless it is authored from or comes from the House of Representatives. So let's say, for example, the Senate wanted to pass a bill to pass a budget for, let's say, $100 million. If they don't have a funding bill from or a vote that funds it from the House of Representatives, it dies because you don't have it. It has no funding.
And what do you think the point of the checks and balance component? What was that for?
Well, a lot of the checks and balances. Well, you have the United States Senate. Okay, you have 100 senators right now. You have 2 senators from every state, so that allows the smaller states not to be run over by the bigger states. Great example. It's Los Angeles County. The population in Los Angeles County is the equivalent to 26 states. Just Los Angeles County. Mm-hmm. So that makes sure that the little guys don't get run over, because the little states don't have that representation. While based on the other way, the House of Representatives, your representation is based on your population. So that's more of the will. The more of the will of the people comes from the House of Representatives, and the Senate is supposed to be a check on that. There's supposed to be a check on the House of Representatives. That's the whole thing with checks and balances. And then obviously you have the judicial, which is supposed to basically talk about the Constitution, supposed to adhere to the Constitution and send something back, whether it's constitutional or not. If it's unconstitutional, it goes back to the legislative branch, and then they can work on it that way.
David, are you okay?
Well, I mean, it's this is a very typical argument, which I've never heard stood on its head so unbelievably, starkly. What you're saying, Brian, Mr. Slowinski, is
Brian's fine.
Is that in the Senate, the checks of the small states on the larger states makes no sense to me, since LA County has more population than 26 states. That seems to me to be exactly what you say. It is a highly undemocratic system that we have running the Senate, and it wasn't set up that way because to give small states a check. It was set up to protect and preserve slavery, and by ignoring that part of the history as to how this system emerged, I just feel like this is it starts out as a constitution, as a constitutional republic, for exactly that reason, that it was designed to maintain the power of the property holding white male elite, and a lot of these vestiges of the system that exist continue to do exactly what the founding fathers wanted it to do, which is to preserve and protect the property and the power of the white male property owning elite. To say that that's a good thing seems to me to be kind of not what I want. I mean, there are structural changes that need to take place. Well, go ahead. Let us hear more.
Did he answer the question? Yeah, go ahead, Brian. Absolutely.
First thing, I mentioned nothing about anybody's anything that you just talked about. I mentioned about the process. Okay. I mean, if you want to start talking about the Missouri Compromise and whether a state came into the Union, whether it was slave or not slave, I can talk. We can talk for hours and hours on that. What I was trying to point out was the fact is a setup is to have the checks and balances so people don't get run over. I mean, the very thing that you're talking about is people getting run over. Is if we just went straight to.
Well, I'd say slavery is running people over. Yeah.
Okay. Well, then if we don't have a republic, we don't have a constitution, if we don't have any checks and balances, then it's just going to be based on let's say, for example, you want everybody to be elected on a popular vote. Okay. Great example. That's using mob rule. Then you don't have you just basically have the House of Representatives and
brother. I'm for mob rule. I mean, what are you talking about? The way that the system works, this is just seems to me an absurd conversation. Yes, I want mob rule. I want majority rule in this country. That's the way you elect a dog catcher. That's the way that you elect a mayor of a city. Why is the Senate, elected any differently? There are tens of billions of dollars being poured into these races. Just as you said, there's no democracy here for exactly the opposite reason that you're saying.
That's your mob rule right there. All the money being put into this is if you don't have any checks on this, then it basically comes down to
how many checks that you have on money. Go ahead, Robbie. Sorry,
I'm sorry. It wasn't my. I do think this is a very important discussion, and I'd love to see you two discuss it. My intent to ask about. I'm sorry.
Go ahead. I'm muttering to myself.
My intent was really just to get people to contemplate. Oftentimes, when we are even just going through the motions, when you pledge allegiance to the flag, a lot of people don't even contemplate saying to the republic. Right. And that what is a republic? Right. So the difference between a republic and democracy. And I think you both really point out some issues on both sides. And the fact that, we're not democratic, whether it's an all money interest or we're not democratic because our elections are being hijacked due to all money interests. That being said, we are in a very precarious situation with the Senate coming up right now and having all parts of a government run by Democrats who also have problematic money interests. Am I suggesting that the alternative is any better? No, but we probably should just contemplate that for a minute. That being at some point. That being said, Brian, I'm going to take the liberty to call you Brian. Why did you run? What did you want to accomplish, and what do you foresee in this upcoming Senate race?
Well, my three things, my three main issues that I came down upon was less government, more freedom, and follow the money.
What do you mean by more freedom?
What I mean by more freedom, people will be allowed to do more things to not be regulated so much by the government that they're regulated out of business. Great example, what's going on with COVID right now is they're shutting down businesses, not even allowing them to be open. I think we can do things like that safely or safer. Like for example, right now we have the, I'm kind of off topic here, but I'm just thinking about is we have the vaccinations right now. Well, the first people that should be getting the vaccinations are those who have the most serious threat. And I would say those who are in nursing homes, anybody who's 75 and older should be getting the first vaccinations. And then from there, you should go to your frontline workers, your doctors, your nurses, your people that have the most exposure should be getting the vaccinations next. They should be offered to them. Right now, we're not doing that. What's happening is, again, like when it happened in Washington, D.C., the people that were getting the tests, the rapid tests and stuff like that were the politicians. They didn't need it. By them getting those rapid tests, instead what they're doing is they're taking away those rapid tests from the frontline workers, the doctors and nurses who are working, and they weren't available for them. And they're the ones who get exposed to everything all the time.
So Brian, people are asking if you're a Republican or a Democrat. Can you clarify that? And I know what you mean by less government, but if you want to elaborate a bit on that, and of course, follow the money. Go ahead.
I can talk for hours. First off, I'm from, as you were mentioning before, cold Minnesota. I grew up in Minnesota, and I grew up in a very Democratic, John F. Kennedy Democrat household. The district that I grew up in was 80% Democrat, 20% Republican. So I was involved in the Democratic Party basically since I was 9 years old. But I really got involved when I basically 1978 started to get involved in elections there, and then I was able to be involved when going to precinct caucuses and stuff like that. Basically starting in 1980 and being able to vote when I was 19. So I was involved in the Democratic for many years. I worked.
We want to make sure that you are highlighting everything that's really important to you, but we also want to make sure that the folks who are watching get their questions answered. Sure. Are you a Republican or a Democrat? It's a yes or no.
I'm a libertarian.
Okay, great. That was what was asked.
I'm a libertarian.
What are your problems with the Republican and Democratic Party, and why are you a libertarian?
And I was also endorsed by the Constitution Party as well. So because I'm someone who believes in the Constitution, I think we need to get back to more of a constitutional republic, have those checks and balances available. So people are not getting run over by moneyed interest like that's happening right now. You're not getting run over by the moneyed interest in the Republican Party in Washington, D.C. or the Democratic Party out of Washington, D.C. Are
your problems with both parties the same?
Yes.
Are your issues? Okay, and what are the top issues with both parties, in your opinion?
The top issues is underrepresentation. They pick and choose who they want to run. Great example is Raphael Warnock on the Democratic side, and basically Kelly Loeffler on the Republican side. You had Brian Kemp and the Atlanta Republicans behind Kelly Loeffler, and you had a lot of the DC Republicans behind Doug Collins. Let's
lighten the mood just a little bit, Brian. I call this our lightning round.
Okay.
And this is what I've done with all the candidates, where I go through and I'm going to call out the candidate's name and give me one word or two, try not to be too wordy, but one word preferably for every candidate. You ready?
Sure.
You may have seen this before. Ed Tarver.
Man of stature.
Raphael Warnock.
False.
Richard Winfield.
Philosopher.
Brian, well, that was you. Al Bartel.
Passionate.
Alan Buckley.
Fiscally minded.
Michael Todd Green.
Only interaction I had with Mr. Green was I invited him to the things, and he said, because you're sponsoring, I'm not coming. So I would say,
Valencia,
that's it.
Valencia Stovall.
Don't know her. I had her in a couple of our online debates. She seemed to be very nice. I would say nice.
John Fortune.
Green New Deal.
Rod Mack.
I only had some interactions via email with him. Other than that, it was he didn't commit to any of the debates or anything like that. He wanted to, but never did. So I would say
Doug Collins.
Doug Collins. What would I call Doug Collins? I'd call him a hypocrite.
Derek Grayson.
Constitutional.
Annette Davis Jackson.
We the people.
Wayne Johnson.
I would say quitter.
Kelly Loeffler.
Unqualified.
Candace Taylor.
Passionate.
Deborah Jackson.
Only saw her once. I would say mayoral.
Jamesia James.
Never had contact with her. I would just say I never really had any contact with her. I invited her to things, so I went. But I don't know.
Tamara Johnson-Shealey.
I would say informational.
Matt Lieberman.
Lost.
Joy Felicia Slade.
Never heard from her. Invited her to different things. I never had any contact with her.
Brian, it was a pleasure to run alongside you on the campaign trail to the United States Senate. So what's the plans? What's next for you as we move into the next candidate? Hopefully he's going to make it. What's next for you, Brian?
Well, I have 8 children. So I'm raising 8 children. I mean, I have 23, 21, 18, 16, 2 13-year-olds and 2 7-year-olds.
Jesus, you're a busy man.
They and my lovely wife are our main focus. The thing about me, a little background, I just didn't jump into this I jumped into this because I believe that we need an actual choice between the lesser of 2 evils that are appointed by Washington, D.C. That was my whole point in all this is what the reason why I sponsored the 14 debates was to get information out there so people can actually make an informed decision on all the candidates. I believe they got that if they actually watched our debates, but you would not see Kelly Loeffler or Raphael Warnock or Doug Collins or even Matt Lieberman involved in this. Matt started coming around, but it was a little bit too late. He should have, when he was actually in the lead back in springtime, when he was pulled that way, he just said, let's start getting everybody together. And let's actually have debates in all 14 congressional districts and start talking about the local level, start talking about the local issues, how we can get rid of homelessness and alleviate that, how we can get, and cash bail stuff like that. Was there issues that are never brought up because first off, Washington D.C. does not want it to be brought up. Okay.
How many votes did you get? Have you heard from either camp to endorse or?
I've heard from neither camp. Obviously Alan Buckley was in the race too. He was a former libertarian. He ran 2 other times. So there's a big split in both. I think I got like 36,000 votes, something like that. But again, I never went out and about. All I basically did was I ran my website, participated in in the online forums that I could that were available. There weren't many, and that's another thing is actually you're having forums. there basically were hardly any forums other than the ones that I sponsored before the votes.
If you did hear from either camp, would you accept a collaborative effort and would you endorse?
If I heard from the camp,
yeah, I mean, you have 36,000 votes.
Actually, starting addressing the issues that one of the main issues is follow the money. If you want to start addressing inflation and our monetary problems we have in this country, we need to change our monetary system. Get back to a wealth-based system, the way this country was originally founded, where money is put in as a wealth, not as a debt, and you have less and less debt.
Answer this before you head out, Brian. Your position on reparations is from the audience.
I believe anybody that was a slave and comes forward, we owe them money. Other than that, descendants don't own that, because you have indentured servants that were indentured up in the Northeast. You have our Indian population that their lands were taken from them. I believe we need to do other things to address those types of issues, not reparations.
So are you saying yes to reparations for descendants
No.
of slaves, or for people
no.
who were actually a slave?
And you were a slave, you came forward, you should be paid for being for that. But
Not their subsequent line.
I mean, I can go back in my line and probably find that I was adopted myself. I can go back down my line and find out that I was someone in my line was a slave at one time. And how far do you want to go back?
We're not gonna go. We're not gonna go back.
Want to go back to the Chinese? People that are from China. Do we need to go back to people who are Chinese? White indentured servants that served in the Rhode Island, Connecticut, and Massachusetts back in the day before the country was founded. How far do we go back?
Okay,
Brian.
we're not. Brian, thank you for joining us on this broadcast. We wanted to bring on all the candidates because we really wanted to get a feel. It just shows that this two-party system, that they're not, they didn't come to you, they didn't knock on your door and ask you about, your votes. They didn't come to any of the candidates. We've had 4 consecutive broadcasts where
that's the whole problem. That's the whole problem. Quite honestly, we need to have Nada on the race, none of the above. Because I think Nada would win this race right now if it was actually on the ballot. And I would love to see that actually being done. Have that actually put on the ballot.
Thank you, Brian, for joining us on this broadcast. Good luck to you with all the kids and the dogs, and happy holidays to you.
Thank you for running yourself, and we need to continue to have choices and actually talk to people.
Yes. Thank you, Brian.
Be open-minded to other issues.
Yeah, let's be open-minded about mob rule also.
Constitutional republic.
Okay, Brian.
Let's let him go. Have a good one, Brian. Thank you.
Bye-bye.
It's fascinating. This happens every time. No, it is. It's fascinating because the people are like, oh, we need to be fiscally responsible, follow the money, and so on. And these are economic people. And then when you ask about reparations, they don't understand that, descendants of slavery are in a position where people cannot be financially productive and put that money back, and they don't make that correlation. This is not the first, position. This is not the first time we heard this.
You want to see the comments? Go over in the comments. I knew they were gonna go. I knew it. I knew we were gonna go. Like I said, I wanted to invite all the candidates because I think what I wanted to get out of this, is that I wanted to show the audience and show voters how we are a pawn. We're all pawns in this political game, and they're ping-ponging us back and forth. This man had 36,000 votes. I had over 100,000 votes. Deborah Jackson had over 300,000 votes. All of the candidates that have been on this broadcast have had thousands and thousands of votes that neither party is taking any interest in. So are they really, I wanted y'all to really see that. I kind of knew where he stood on reparations, so I didn't want to go too far with that. But the comments will say it all.
I mean, how does someone that educated feel that way? David, this is your department. Explain that.
Explain what?
Explain how someone.
We want you to explain all white people.
I'm
That's
just
what it is.
dumbfounded, by
That's
this.
Robbie's comment.
I just, to
Can't,
me,
Robbie.
what specific part of that that.
The economic, see, to me, I continue to see it as an economic breakdown. These people keep talking about, when he says less government, right? Or he said, less government. I actually understand what he's saying, because a lot of times our government gets into a project and doesn't really manage it or oversee it in a way that's, ideal. We see that a lot with wasted spending. So the less government, I understand. And then he talks about, economics and follow the money. So this is someone very conscious of money and economics. But then when we get to the part about reparations and how, there's an entire subclass in our country that clearly has a lineage of trauma, and that
I want to go there. So let me see. Brian, raise your hand. I see you in the background. Raise your hand if you want to come back. He wants to come back in, y'all. Okay. Here we go. All right, Brian, I did not bring you here because I knew where you stood on the issue. So I wanted to give you a chance to say I don't support it and let you leave. But since they are asking you to stay and these comments are going crazy, I'm going to let y'all have it. I'm going to sit back.
Have you seen the comments, Brian?
No, actually, they're not coming through for some reason.
Okay, I'll put them on. No worries, I'll put them on the screen.
Yeah.
Let's go. Here you go, Brian. I was trying to save you from this.
I'm not familiar with your software. Hold on a minute.
No worries. I'll put it on the screen. I don't know. Talk to David and Robbie. Don't try to look for it. I'm going to put them on the screen. Don't worry.
Here, I got you, Brian. Okay.
Yes, I am.
Way off. They're saying you're way off.
There are people that are hurting out there, and I understand that. There are people that have been stuck in the lower rungs of our monetary system because they never had any money and they found no way to get out. The way to get people out, get out of that is we got to start teaching people about money. People don't know about how to expand their money, how to.
Brian, hold on, because that's not the question. You're talking about a general populace and problems within the general populace among the poor. The question on reparations is for descendants of slavery. So it would be Black people who had someone in their family member who was a slave, and they are their descendants, right? They have. So please explain. And for me, just in general, but please explain for me the economic point, because you lose me when you say less government. I kind of understand that. When you say fiscally responsible, I understand that. I pay very high taxes. I want the money to go where it's supposed to go, right? But what I don't understand from an economic point is you see those components. But then when you look at descendants of slavery, you say, no, reparations, no, even though these people in a sub-demographic would be highly productive, money back into the economy if reparations were given per the history. So what is the problem with that for you?
Well, first off, reparations should not come from the federal government.
But it was the federal government that executed these conditions.
If the wants to vote on it, then they can vote on that. But quite honestly,
say that one more time. If what?
Argument. Because again, that's like saying because I'm Polish, okay, and because the Germans, invaded Poland, that I'm entitled to German reparations. Why? I didn't fight in that.
What did you say? If they want to vote, what was that sentence? I didn't hear it. I'm sorry. If they want to vote on that, what is that? What was said?
Well, first off, any kind of money that should be distributed this way is not the responsibility of the federal government. It should go back to the state and local is where that should come from.
Was slavery not rampant all over the U.S.? Was that not a government executed situation?
Well, first off, it was a private thing first.
Did the government allow it?
Privately.
Did the government allow it?
The government allowed it in certain states, and other states it did not. That was part of the.
Wait a minute.
What state did the government not allow slavery in?
Let's hold.
Let the man answer. What state did the government not allow slavery in?
What states did they not allow slavery?
That's what you just said. Just give an example.
Well, the northern states, for example, like when Minnesota was brought into the country in I believe it was 1852. So they came in as a anti-slavery state. That was part of the Missouri Compromise.
So the question is what state did the government not allow slavery in?
Not allow slavery? They came
what
to
it
the
says.
states. That was one of the whole points. One of many reasons for the Civil War was it was slave states versus non-slave states.
Brian, Robbie, let me just ask him a question. When was the first Fugitive Slave Act enacted?
Probably in the 1700s.
Yes. It was enacted 2 years after the ratification of the Constitution.
Mm-hmm.
It was actually one of the first acts of Congress. What does the Fugitive Slave Act say? What does it say, Brian? What's the content?
I believe that if part of it is if they escape, they're supposed to be brought back from wherever they're at.
They. Who is they?
The slaves.
Enslaved people. Yeah. Now let me ask you.
I mean, at that time, you also had lots of indentured servants in the Northeast as well that came over from.
Oh, you had indentured servants in the South as well, but
yeah, you had them in the 1500s and 1600s up in the North.
There were no 1500s in the English colonies in the mainland. 1609 is when the first settlement was. But what is the content of the Fugitive Slave Act? What does it exactly say?
Off the top of my head, I don't know.
Okay, let me just off the top of my head say that the Fugitive Slave Act ratified the fact that human beings could be held as property, that they were property first before they were human beings, and that if they ran away, they were violating the rights of the owner, the right of the owner to his property.
That's what I was saying about
and every state was required to pass the law, the Fugitive Slave Act. It wasn't just one Fugitive Slave Act. They were designed and passed 3 or 4 times during the period before the Civil War. The Fugitive Slave Act actually ratified in the Constitution that human beings could be held as property. So the entire federal government and its apparatus of state power was implicated or under the was required by that, and there were mob riots. That mob again in places like Boston when slave catchers tried to take African Americans back to captivity. There were lots of things that were going on that implicate the federal government in this protection of private property. So, the first level on which you're dealing with this is, to me, just the Supreme Court decisions that were made. Most infamously, the Dred Scott decision. The Dred Scott decision, right? Which was in effect a declaration, a reinforcement by the Supreme Court of the fact that human beings could be held as property, and the famous quote that a black man has no rights that a white man is bound to respect.
And that's wrong.
So you're by now. That's just one part of the whole issue, because the idea in this country was. What that this country was founded on was that the rights of property are above and beyond the human rights of a whole bunch of individuals, including indentured servants, Native Americans, all of these other folks. But I just don't even know where to take this at this point.
I think you've been clear, David. Go ahead.
No, when you have a system in which dollars count, and human beings don't.
But the question here is, let's get past the teaching lesson here, and let's actually talk get down to brass tacks. Okay, what it comes down to is we have blacks as Tamara was saying before, they're 95% of the homeless population. Let's address that. Let's address education. Let's address housing. You know, the tiny home, stuff like that.
Are you saying that you want to do that in general, or are you saying that this would be specific to Black people?
I want to do it in general.
You want to, okay? See, that's where we're. But that's not a non-legitimate situation. But you have to understand that the majority of Black people are in these circumstances due to what's happened historically. And so where we lose connection here, as David would say, unify, is that even when you're given the information, you know, and I'm glad you came back on, but I hope that you will reconsider, because unity isn't unilateral. You know, we can't agree on fiscal responsibility and, you know, less government when it's not operating correctly, but then, and that's what you want and that's what we want, but then on things that people really need, you're like, no, we draw the line there. That's not unity. That's why we can't unify. That's why the Republicans and Democrats play us against each other and take all the winnings, and we fight for scraps.
Yeah, well, that's.
So you're a very clever man. I really hope you will reconsider, especially since you didn't know some of this information. I don't think David was trying to lecture you. I think he was really like, hey, do you know this? And leading you down a line of thinking for you to reach a conclusion that may be very valid.
I mean, you know, if you have a selective history of the United States that you're putting forward, it seems to me.
If you want me to start down all the different laws and all the good laws and all the bad court cases.
The Fugitive Slave Act is a pretty important piece of I mean, you know, it virtually started the Civil War. You know, so and the Dred Scott decision and the other, all of the things that you're talking about the fighting between the slave states, who was going to be admitted and you know, as a slave, and who was going to be admitted as a free state. All of that had to do with the structure of the Senate, that the slaveholding states dominated the Supreme Court, which was controlled, I mean, as we have seen very, very clearly in the last 4 years.
And that's
the Senate controls the thing.
Both ways, David. Okay, you can't say you want mob rule, but then it's okay to have mob rule, and then we don't need the judiciary anymore, and we don't need to
mob rule. I include those African Americans who were enslaved. If they were voting for senators and congressmen in the slave states, well, who do you think they would vote for? I mean, they weren't going to vote for John C. Calhoun, you know, or Breckinridge or any of these other senators. Yeah, that's what I want. I want mob rule that includes those African Americans in the voting population.
Okay, and
come on, you know, this you want to talk about having it both ways?
No. You can't have it both ways when you talk about mob rule, and
I'm joking about that. That's you know, you brought up the term. I'm just throwing it back in your face.
Yeah,
you know,
do you
call that mob rule? You see, the whole point of this whole exercise is to say that the mob, that is the people. And if you include in the people the African Americans, the 4 million of them out of a total population of 25 million were voting citizens. And if the Native Americans were voting citizens, do you know how many Native Americans there were in 1776 east of the Mississippi River? How many were there? The native nations of east of the Mississippi.
The Iroquois Nation. You look at the Cherokee Nation. You look at all that. I mean,
there were. Yeah, how many were there? What was the total compared to the population of the European Americans and African Americans at that time?
6-1 in favor of the Indians.
How much?
6-1 in favor of the Indians.
Well, that may be in the whole continental United States. No, it was about equal to the population of the European and African population east of the Mississippi.
I mean, one of the problems you have now is
I want mob rule for those Native American nations. I want them to vote in the
and they have their own state.
Brian, let me ask you a question. Why do you think you have a block? I'm sorry. I'm trying to read the comments while we're talking, but why do you think you have a block when it comes to, you know, paying a debt? You mentioned the federal government. You're like, the federal government shouldn't pay out. But really, when we've had this discussion, there's obviously some type of complicity with our federal government and what's happened with slavery, right? And other groups have received, please, go 1 second. I don't want to argue with you. I just want to, and I promise I'll let you talk. We've given compensation to other groups who have been disenfranchised, much less than what's occurred to the descendants of slavery. So coming from what you stated here on the show alone, why do you think you have a block in providing this funding when it actually would benefit the economy, which is one of the things that you, I think, are trying to do?
I don't think I have a block. I think I have a different approach.
Okay, so your approach is to help everyone in general and ignore what's happened with this particular subgroup. Is that right?
Yeah, it's helped everybody. I mean,
okay, well, that's clear. If that's where you are, that's where you are. At least you admit it, and I can respect that.
Okay.
At least you come out and admit it, because then people can choose. But just know that when you take that position, it basically creates a block to unify. Because I'm not Black. I might have some, and you might have some too, Chico. But that being said, I can't vote for you when I know that this occurred to people, and I know that the federal government did this to people, and that therefore we should pay and move on, and that it would help the economy. So basically, we're stuck now.
What we have in front of us right now, of the $600 check versus a $2,000 check. Will it help people to put that money in the economy? Yes. Is it the proper thing to do? No.
On both sides, so you don't think a $600 or a $2,000 check should be given to anybody?
No. What they should be doing is spending our money properly in the federal government.
I agree with you. They should be spending our money properly, but you just said that you want it to help everybody. This check's going to everybody, but 600 or 2,000 shouldn't.
It needs to be on the state and local level. That's
half of the stock market is in the hands of less than 1% of the population. The total wealth of the stock market is in the hands of half of it is in the hands of the top 1%. The 80% of the stock market's wealth is in the hands of fewer than 10% of the population. The rest of us, even the ones who are really fortunate, who have some retirement and things like that, of which, you know, half the population has over the age of 50 has no retirement. And you're saying this is because people are don't know how to handle their money. I mean, you know, Brian, come on. This is, you know, the system is set up to concentrate wealth.
We need to get back.
Set up to concentrate wealth.
Well, if you
and you're, you know, what you're saying is, let's remove the federal government from any ability that it's the only potential that we have to have control over these huge concentrations, hundreds of billions of dollars of wealth that is in the hands of corporations and people like Kelly Loeffler and
corporations are basically a pass-through.
What's that?
Corporations are basically a pass-through. They basically get the money from their consumers and they pass it through.
They don't take anything for themselves. The corporations don't.
But here's the whole problem is,
come on, Brian, this is really, you know, come on. I mean, this is they are making decisions about the lives of hundreds and hundreds of thousands of people, and they make them on the basis of profit maximization. That's how we have a finance, insurance, and real estate sector of the economy that now is sucking the entire manufacturing base out of this country, because they incentivize corporations to move investment overseas. That they are a profit maximizing machinery.
Take the job.
And the only way that you can do anything about that is to have some kind of federal structure that claws back what they're getting until you can overthrow them. Because this whole idea that their money counts as votes, you know, which is essentially what the Supreme Court has been saying, not just the Citizens United in 2013, but for generations before that. There's been only very, very rare circumstances in which the Supreme Court has not decided against working people and for there's only rare circumstances that they voted for working people and against the property power of this country. Do you know how hard the Supreme Court has made it to form unions? Are you in favor of labor unions, Brian? Or is that another thing are you right to work? Do you believe in the right that people don't?
Idea about my background. Let me educate you a little bit. Okay. I grew up in Minnesota. I was a member of a local union, United Food and Commercial Workers Local 6-578. I was a proud member of that. I worked in the grocery business for many, many, many years. My dad was a member of the local P9 of the Amalgamated Meat Workers. Okay.
Oh,
you remember the Hormel strike?
Yeah, sure.
I was right in the middle of that. Okay. And what I saw is I saw moneyed interest, the corporate interest, Hormel, as well as a Democratic governor who I supported, Rudy Perpich, in 1984. I was one of the main college coordinators when I was going to college. I was the chairman of the local Democratic St. Thomas Democrats, where I went to college. I supported him, and what did he do? He ran roughshod over and brought in the troops, and basically broke the union with the moneyed interests that were involved from the union on the national level. So the combination of the company, the national level union, as well as the local politicians screwed the union workers big time.
So Brian,
my background.
Let me jump in. I'm gonna jump in right here, Brian. I tried, Brian. I knew that we're gonna go back to the original question in reparations and bringing you back in, Brian. I'm gonna say this very respectfully. I don't know how many real Black friends you have, but if you have some, I want you to maybe consider having a real in-depth conversation with them about their Black experience here in America. And I can just tell you,
I have a niece and nephew who are Black, who are mixed.
Black. I want you to talk to some Black people, not mixed. And I say that respectfully because I'm gonna tell you our story.
Dad is Black. He's from Arkansas. I have some friends who one of them's in the Navy.
I want you to get you some more Black friends because I want you to have an in-depth conversation, Brian. And I say that respectfully. If I have to be your Black friend and we have to have a conversation, we will. Because I want you to understand that Black people, let me finish. Let me say this real quick because we only have about 3 minutes and I'm going to give you like 30 seconds to wrap up. But I just want you to know that our experience here in America is not textbook. It's not written. I'm going to tell you generation after generation, the damage and the trauma and the fact that we were never able to accumulate wealth. This whole country was built off of our blood, sweat, and tears, Brian. It's old. It's a debt old that is owed to us who are descendants of slavery in this country. So I'm gonna give you just a few seconds because we only have 2 minutes left, but wrap up. And I did not bring you here because I knew this was gonna happen when this question came up, but it's here. But
first off, I'm not quite honestly, I'm not right on everything and I can learn. I'm trying to teach as well. And what I'm trying to teach, for example, is our monetary system. If you look it up, and whoever WC is, he doesn't get it. Yes, I do actually. I'd love to have a 24-hour conversation with you about what I get and what I don't get. Okay. If you look at our monetary system, if you follow the money, we are on a debt-based, fiat-based system that was brought heavily into our country in 1913 with the Federal Reserve Act. Okay, if you look at the Federal Reserve Act and what it does and how it brings a debt-based money into our debt-based is so anytime money is put into circulation, it is put in as a debt. We need to get away from that. Originally, this country, we had a wealth-based system. That's where the miners would go out and they'd get gold and silver and they'd bring it back and get it surveyed. And then the surveyor would take that gold and put it in the bank. And then you'd have a note saying that, hey, I have such and such money at the bank. And you take that note to the store where you wanted to buy some goods. Okay. So that way money was put in, money was never brought in as a debt. Right now, the way money gets put into circulation is it gets put in as a debt. So there's always a little accounting thing there. That debt never gets paid back. The only way it gets paid back is for someone to go bankrupt, and they do that bankruptcy off the poor. If we get away from that, get back to a wealth-based system, you will not have that debt being put on the poor and anybody else. It would allow everybody to gain from a wealth-based type system.
We're at the top of the hour. You know what? They say you still didn't get it.
Part of that wealth until 1865 was in human beings. The wealthy people in this country were the plantation bourgeoisie, and there were more millionaires in the state of Alabama than there were in New York City and Boston combined. And the basis for their wealth was human beings. So, and they could borrow money off of those human beings.
That's debt, is what that is. That's the debt that is there. That's the debt they were paying back by work as slaves. That debt is there. So what I'm trying to tell you is to get away from that is bring stuff back in as a wealth instead of having all this debt, all this debt, the debt that is based on slavery as well. Get away from that. Get back to a wealth-based system where everybody benefits.
They were collateral for loans.
Inflation, that hidden tax that is inflation, that would get rid of the hidden tax that is inflation that has been lowering the standard of living since the 70s here in this country. Every year.
And how about the environmental destruction that's been going on, which is mostly at the hands of corporations and a whole structure of suburbanization.
And time is up. Time is up. We're at the top of the hour. Brian, thank you for joining us. I don't know where I tried to not let this broadcast go off the rails, but it did. Thank you for joining us, Brian.
Anytime.
Thank you. Thank you. We will have you back because it sounds like David still wants to do some more talking to you. So let's see when your schedule permits. Thank you, Brian.
We learn from each other.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Bye.
David and Robbie. We're at the top of the hour.
Yeah.
I am Tamara Johnson-Shealey. You can find me at tamarashealey.com. You can find Mr. David Slavin at Acknowledge the Divide right here on Facebook. You can find Robbie at robbiecaban.com. Every week we give voice to issues, activists, and activism in Georgia. We'll be back next week.
Good for you, Robbie. You really ask great questions.
I love where you're going, David. This is actually I like when you get in there. You know, and you know what?
I don't know why I get so head up. I get worked up over this stuff, and I can't.
It breaks apart. It divides us. It divides us. We can't have everything one way. There has to be a give and take. And to his credit, he came back. He was willing to have a conversation. He seems honest. He actually said, I don't know everything. I could be wrong. I'd like to learn, and I'll continue dialogue. Good for him. We'll
have him back in the new year when his schedule permits. We'll have him back. And this time we're going to be nicer.
He's a prime example. He's a prime example of the white blind spot. Of learning history, huh?
No, it's so strange though. He understands debt, so you don't understand the debt owed. He said we need to get past to doing things for everybody and out of this problematic debt, but he's skipping over. Well, he doesn't want to reconcile.
We'll be back, y'all. We're at the top of the hour. We'll be back next week. Same time, same channel.
Forever means privileges never.
See you guys next week, everybody.
Bye.